the sunlight disappears, the candles shine brighter and our spirits grow lighter. Shabbat is finally here. Up to meet you, we are waiting to greet you as the night is drawing near. We are lifting our voices, can you hear us rejoice as Shabbat is finally here?
Shabbat Shalom. It is such a pleasure to be here with you in person, to be with you in the virtual space as we connect to one another, as we connect to our tradition, as we connect to Shabbat, singing our way in. These words are on page 10 if you have a copy of the prayer book handy. We join together, Hine Matov, how good it is to be together this rainy Pittsburgh evening.
Tohu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tohu manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tohu manayim shevet achim gam yachad.
It is wonderful to be here with you as we welcome Shabbat, kindling the lights. On page 2, I would invite you to turn to the prayers of our tradition beginning on page 2, as it's my pleasure to invite forward Michelle and Hannah to join us in the kindling of the Shabbat lights. Yeah, Irene, fantastic. Sorry that our communication was off there.
Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu b'hadlit ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to lighten the light of Shabbat.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much. And as we turn to pages 4 and 5 for Kiddush, I would invite you to rise if it's comfortable for you to do so. ויחולו השמיים והארץ וכל צבאם, ויחל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה, וישבות ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה. ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי, ויקדש אותו, כי בו שבת מכל מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zicharon l'maaseh v'reishit, ki hu yom tehila l'mikra'e kodesh, zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim. Ki vanu v'charta v'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim, v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha-Shabbat. Amen. I invite you to be seated as we turn in our prayer books now on page 12. We find words of Psalm 95. Let us sing joyously to Adonai. Raise a shout for our rock and our deliverer. words, the stanzas of Lecha Dodi, which we can find on pages 20 and 21 in our prayer book, are beautifully written as a piece of contemporary, at least for the Jewish world, some 500 years old poetry. And the fact that they're so beautifully written lends them to being used in melody after melody. I imagine if we went around the room asking for a favorite melody of Lecha Dodi, we could come up with at least as many as there were people in this room, if not double or triple that number. The melody we're going to use tonight, the same one Tim Brogdon introduced to us last week, a newer melody by Josh Warshawski, and we invite you to join us as you catch on pages 20 and 21. Invite you to rise.
Bye.
We've turned the eyeballs over mask greeting into something of an art. You can see how someone is feeling just through their eyes. And I would invite you to make use of those special powers as you turn to the people beside you, as you wish them a Shabbat Shalom. As we continue our greeting, I invite you to take your seats as we move back into safer, melodious territory with words of Shalom Aleichem. Goldfarb would be proud. Page 24.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon. Mihi Melech Malachei Malachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boechem l'shalom, Malachei l'shalom, Malachei Elyon. Mihi Melech Malachei Malachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruni l'shalom, Malachei l'shalom, Malachei Elyon. Mihi Melech Malachei Malachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Zeichem l'shalom, Malachei l'shalom, Malachei Elyon. Mihi Melech Malachei Malachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
And on the following pages, entrances to holiness are everywhere. The possibility of ascent is all the time, even at unlikely times and through unlikely places. There is no place on earth without God's presence. Yitkada v'yitkada shemei Rabba, b'almad yivrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chayedecho beit Yisrael. Bagala, bagala, uvizman kariv v'imeru, amen. Yehei shmei Rabba mevorach, le'alam ulam ne'omaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shemei l'kudesha b'ri le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tush berchata v'nechemata damiran be'alma v'yimeru. As we continue on page 28 with our Baruch Hu praise, I invite you to rise if it's comfortable for you to do so.
La
And on page 30, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim b'chochma poteach she'arim uvitvuna mishaneh itim umachalif et hazmanim umisader et hakochavim b'mishmerotehem barakia kirtzono borei yom v'layla goleo or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or uma'avir yom umevi layla uma'avdil bein yom uvein layla Adonai tziva'ot shemo el chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim. And on page 32 in the English, everlasting love you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night will we reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. You may be seated as we continue words of Ve'ahavta, page 36. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha. Ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi etzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha u'lechtecha b'derech Uvshoch becha uvkumecha ukshartam leot yadecha v'hayu letotafot beinenecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru vasitem et kol mitzvotai Vitem kedoshim le'elohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem. Asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem. Adonai Elohechem emet. True and certain it is that we put our trust in God, who led our people from slavery in Egypt to a better place, a promised land, setting a model and expectation for us in our day. Words of Mi Chamocha, our praise of thanksgiving, page 40.
Say
you join me now in the English on the bottom of page 43? Give us a place to rest, Adonai, our God. Bring us into shelter in the soft, long evening shadows of your truth. For with you are true protection and safety, and in your presence are acceptance and gentle love. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. And recognizing Shabbat as a covenant between God and the Jewish people for all time, we continue together, page 44. Beginning on page 46, we find our Shabbat evening Amidah, the central portion of our worship, our standing prayer. If it is comfortable for you to do so, I invite you to rise as together we join in song and prayer. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, Ve'Konei Hakol, Ve'Zocher Hasderot v'Imahot, Umevi Gula Livnei Vneihem, Leman Shemo v'Ahava, Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagen. Baruch atah Adonai, Magin Avraham Vezrat Sarah. Ata Gibor Leolam Adonai, Mechaye HaKol Ata Rav Lehoshia, Morid HaTal, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofeh Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem emunato lishenei afar michamocha bal gevurot umido melach melech memit umechaye umatzmiach Yeshua v'ne'eman atad lachayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai mechaye hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh u'kdoshim b'chol yom yalu chasela. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. The remaining blessings of this section of our service begin on page 54 and continue through page 62. I invite you to continue now in silent prayer with those traditional words of prayer or with the silent prayers and meditations that can only come from your heart. When you have finished your silent prayer this evening, I invite you to be seated. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Words of Mishaberach Lecholim, our prayer for those who are ill, can be found on page 253 in your prayer books. And as we turn to page 253, we bring to mind those who are suffering this Shabbat, those who are suffering from wounds we might be able to see, and those who are struggling with wounds we could never perceive, those who are suffering from ailments of mind, of body, of spirit. If you are thinking of a loved one, your family and friends who are suffering this evening, and you are comfortable sharing their name aloud for a prayer of healing, I invite you to do so at this time, using the comment box if you are comfortable doing so, and if you are with us in the room, sharing their names, my eyes meet yours. Baruch atah Adonai Rofeh HaCholim. Blessed are you, God, who brings a measure of comfort to all who are ill. And together we say, Amen. It's a curious thing in this space that I complain when the sun is coming in, and I complain when I look out and all I see are those dark skies. A curious story tells of a righteous man determined to help others. When approached by a poor young man without family or material possessions with which to pay for his wedding day, the righteous man took all of his money and went with the poor young man to find his equally poor spouse-to-be to help plan and pay for the wedding. It was a long trip, the story relates, and the road home that he traveled, now alone, was filled with peril. The water in the streams ran red. Snakes and scorpions were thick on the trail, but because of his righteousness, he was able to avoid the dangers, to the extent that he got to a stream that was too impassably wide, and a dragon itself lay down in the water so the righteous man could walk across its back. Just when he thought he was near to safety, the angel of death stood before him to take his soul. The righteous man frantically tried to explain why he was traveling alone, what he had just come from doing, that he had already been through so much. Chastened, the angel of death went back to the throne of God to ask for guidance. A voice from heaven declared the righteous man correct and granted him more peaceful years on earth. It's a rather fantastic, as in full of fantasy story, as evidenced by the more direct understanding of God's role in death than we might hold today, and, well, the dragon that laid down across the river. I offer it tonight not to remind you that righteousness averts judgment's severe decree, although with the high holidays quickly approaching, that theme is certainly on my mind. But I offer it tonight to focus on the act of rebuke. It's actually a Jewish value, you know. The ability to receive and give constructive, meaningful feedback is a mitzvah, a commandment. Hokeach tokiach, we read in Leviticus 19. It's an obligation to reprove or rebuke a friend or neighbor who is going astray. It's our obligation, but it doesn't mean it's so easy to do. The rabbis of the Mishnah were quick to point this out. Rabbi Tarfon said, "I would be surprised if there was anyone in this generation who can receive rebuke." Why? Because when one rebukes another, saying, "Remove the splinter," or "think about the minor transgression before your eyes," the other says to him, "Remove the giant beam, that major transgression that you did from before your eyes," retaliating rather than listening. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, "I would be surprised if there was anyone in this generation who knew how to receive rebuke," just as Rabbi Tarfon said. And Rabbi Akiva said, "I'd be surprised if there was anyone in this generation who knew how to give rebuke," neither of which is an easy thing. Speaking only for myself, I can echo how difficult this can be. When someone, hi wife, offers me thoughtful, instructive criticism, something that I could and should be doing better, I have to aggressively work to, not become aggressive, to sit back and not attempt to impugn the speaker, but to listen to their words, to reflect on my actions rather than search for excuses. It's hard, and that's what makes this week's Torah portion even more interesting. This week we start the book of Deuteronomy, the fifth and final book of Torah. Moses begins his final series of speeches before he is to die, before the Israelites are to enter the promised land, not with words praising the Israelites for the journey they've been on, but he begins with words of rebuke. "Do you remember the incident of the spies," he asks them in Deuteronomy 1, "and how your ancestors blew their chance to enter the land? Yeah, how about we don't do that," he says at the start of his speech. And did the people resent it? Did they respond harshly or aggressively to Moses' harshness? Apparently not, Rabbi Bradley Artson writes. The speech is dutifully recorded. We read it again and again and again throughout history. And when Moses died, the people bewailed his absence. Rebuke, while difficult, is vitally important. Without our friends, our colleagues, our family being willing to point out our own errors of judgment or action, we become blind to our own faults. Too much was at stake for the ancient Israelites not to be able to listen. They had to learn from history. They had to learn from their mistakes. Too much is at stake for us not to be able to listen. We have to learn from our history. We have to learn from our mistakes. So, when you go to provide rebuke, do so gently, lovingly, at a time when the person is ready to listen, and not only when you are ready to speak. And when it's time to receive rebuke, do so gently, reflectively, kindly, that we all might know the same bright future the ancient Israelites did. Shabbat Shalom. I invite you to turn now back in our Sidurim, back in our prayer books, to words of Aleinu L'Shabeach. On the bottom of page 282, we find these words. Rabbi Emily, by way of apology for the sermon, would you come up and help open the ark? As everyone finds their page, I invite you to please rise. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotzer breshit, שלא עשנו כרויי הרצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. Thank you. You may be seated, and would you join me in an English reading on page 290, a meditation before words of Kaddish Yatom, our mourner's Kaddish. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch, a fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be, and oh, to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing, to love what death has touched. We continue by remembering those in our congregation, our family and friends whom we have lost. We mourn the passing of Toba Myers, who was laid to rest in recent days, and observe the period of Shaloshim for Bernard J. Barr, Selma Florence Kuby, and Ruth Schulman. This Shabbat, we mark the yahrzeit, the commemoration of the passing of Joseph Amster, Erwin Blyman, Emmanuel Bukareski, Isidore Fellner, Edith Field, Leona Fox, Margaret Goldberg, Francie Hausman, Ruth Kaplan, Charlotte Levin, Faye Levin, Reuben Levine, A. Roy Lightman, Joseph Mandel, Rosalind Markovsky, Ruth Marks, Harry Rosenberg, Jeffrey Rosenberg, Abe Ross, Sheila Rubin, Ruth Sajewitz, Frances Schumacher, Cecilia Schulman, Mark B. Schulman, Joseph Singer, Miriam Solid, Esther Stiers, and Sarah Zoffer. I have the sense that one of those was a Levin, if not both, and I apologize for my pronunciation. If there are others you are remembering this Shabbat, or if I have inadvertently mispronounced the name of your loved one, I would invite you to share their name either in the comment box, in the space you are in, bring back their memory, or as my eyes meet yours. Yehei zichronam livracha, may the memory of all of our loved ones be for us an everlasting blessing. I would invite you to rise as together we turn to page 294, affirming words hallowed by generations of our people, page 294. Yit gadol v'yit kadash shemei rabbah, b'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, B'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevorach leolam u'lamei amaya. Yitvarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata Tushbechata v'nechamata Damiran Be'alma Ve'imru. Amen. Yehe Shalama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chayim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'imru. Amen. Oseh Shalom Bimramav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'imru. Amen. May God, who makes peace in the highest of heavens, make peace for us and for all who mourn. And together we say, Amen. You may be seated. Before we conclude our service with words of Adonai owes a special thank you to everyone who participated. For those of you who joined us here at the Beit HaTefillah and Temple Emmanuel of South Hills, for those with us in sacred virtual community, Leslie Hoffman, as always, for making sure everything just works. Jim Burns, Rebecca Clausen, thank you for guiding us in song and in prayer this evening and in our closing song. God, who has given strength to generations of God's people, give us strength as well, the strength to gracefully receive, the strength to gracefully give, rebuke, and the strength going out and coming in to life and to peace forevermore. Shabbat Shalom.